exporting countries during its 30th OPEC and non-OPEC Ministerial Meeting has approved an increment of Nigeria's August 2022 oil production quota by 1.5% to 1.826 million barrels per day from 1.799 million barrels per day in July 2022. Under the present arrangement, Nigeria's crude oil quota remains the highest in Africa, followed by Angola, Algeria with 1.525 million barrels per day and 1.105 million barrels per day, respectively, while Sudan is the least with 750,000 barrels per day. The organization has consistently increased the production quota of Nigeria and other member countries in the past few months to enable it return to pre-COVID levels when production was much higher. But it remains doubtful if Nigeria, which has not been meeting previous quotas, to have the capacity to produce this new quota. Well, joining me to discuss this is an oil and gas expert. He's an energy lawyer and an analyst, Dr. Ayodele Oni. Dr. Oni, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'd like to start this way because we're talking OPEC and we've all heard what happened. Mohamed Sanusi Bakindo, who's the outgoing Secretary General of OPEC, is dead. You know, that's what came into us, and it's fair enough that we start on that note. It was expected to wrap up his tenure, second term, at the end of this month. Let's do an overview. You are a professional in this industry. What's your assessment of what's been happening, you know, or his activities at OPEC for a while now?
I think it's done. I think it's done well for the country. My condolences to everyone in the sector, particularly Nigerians in the sector. He's been a stellar performer as far as I am concerned. Any failures you may see around meeting our quotas and all of those are our own local issues or our own local problems. He's done quite well. He's been a good ambassador of Nigeria within the OPEC, and everything he stood for has been great as far as I'm concerned. He's done reasonably well. And my condolences to his family, his friends, and everyone in the sector. It's a really big loss in the sector.
Indeed, may his soul rest in peace. So we can move on now. You know, OPEC has increased our oil quota from 1.5, about 1.5%, that's to 1.82 million barrels per day from what we had before now. But clearly, the question is not even the figures now. We've not been able to meet up with what's been given to us before now, the quota. And now we still get these increases coming up month after month. What is your reaction to this? Do you think we can really meet up with the challenges that we face as a country?
It's a sad situation that we cannot at the moment. If you listen to Mr. Komolafe of the Upstream Commission, he said the country was losing about $3.25 billion worth of crude. Over the last 14 months, the country had lost that much. You know, we've been unable to meet our quota. Despite the increases, we're not able to do more than 1.2, 1.3, if I remember, maybe closer to 1.4. But we've not been able to meet our old quota of around 1.7, speak much less of the 1.5% increase that we do have now to about 1.826 million. The issue has been a number of things. One, generally speaking, crude theft, vandalism, and that would occasion a reduction in investment in production. And like you may be aware, many of these companies are even looking at alternative means of moving their crude from production point to the FSO or FPSO to having same exported because of this same issue of theft. So it's been a major challenge. So there's been underinvestment, and it will be difficult for us to even meet this new quota as things stand.
I want to follow up, but when we talk about crude oil theft here, not just anybody can just go to try to steal crude oil one way or the other from our oil wells. This would be done by some sort of experts or professionals. And who are those also buying this product, this crude, when it is stolen? So it's like Government, do you think government is ready to address this issue?
Okay. The truth is that I believe that you require cooperation with the indigenous peoples in those areas, the oil producing communities. I mean, with the new host community arrangement and formation of trust, and the fact that they get 3%, I believe, is of the operating budget of the previous financial year or so for those companies. I know there are still issues around the regulations, how that would work in practice. I mean, these are opportunities to have conversations with people in those communities because they are aware, they know those people. And I dare say in some cases they would be maybe retired experts, maybe those who still are even in the industry are in collaboration with some of these people because it's not that easy to steal. There's need to vandalize. Generally, you have to vandalize, you have to do a number of things, and there are a number of even refineries. There are a number of illegal refineries. There's a lot of bunkering going on, and a number of illegal refineries to even refine the crude. And then I don't know if you are aware, on one or two occasions recently, boats have been seized, vessels have been seized that have stolen crude. So it's a cartel. I believe it's something even done internationally. It's a trade going on, illegal trade going on even internationally, where people steal crude from various points, from the point of production up to the point where you reach the terminal and the point of export. It's in that area that stolen. It's not in the ice on the ICs or elsewhere, or generally at the point of production, but it's at the point of transporting from production to to the terminal point. So I believe there are people who understand the industry who are in court with some of these people. And of course, you can't. The solutions would have to be indigenous, local solutions where government does cooperate. And I understand very recently the NNPC did call on leaders of some of these host communities to find solutions to all of this because this is a time we should be making a lot of money. Actually, we should be making. I hear cities speak of surplus. I was having a phone conversation with someone who lives in Alberta, and they were saying the state of Alberta is even looking to, or province, I think that's what it's called, is looking to even probably give out checks that there's excess cash from sale of crude. So you can imagine we should actually have a lot of money. Of course, we've got challenges around refining and then making a lot and then still having to buy back refined product and buy much more than what we make from selling our crude. That's a different conversation. But at least we should be making a lot of money. You can discuss balance of trade and balance of payment issues subsequently.
As much as we expect a lot from the PIA, do you think this would, in one way, address some of these contending issues?
Oh, yes, the PIA does a really good job. The only challenge now is the debate around suspending some of its provisions and implementation. The problem with Nigeria has never been laws or good quality thinking or thoughts or policies, generally speaking. The problem has always been implementation. For example, the PIA seeks to do away completely with subsidy, but in practice, that's not been implemented. You see a number of things the PIA seeks to do, but in practice, for whatever reason, political considerations, whatever it may be, those are not being implemented as they should be. So I think that's always the problem. The devil is in the detail, the devil is in the implementation.
Let's move forward now. We're talking about crude production again. Something comes to my mind. Just last week, the NUPRC, which you mentioned, with Mr. Gbenga Komolafe heads, just gave licenses to Marginal Fields for operators to get to work. I'm thinking, will this also be a positive regards to our crude production? Will it help increase one way or the other?
Oh, yes, it should. Because a number of those fields are producing already. I mean, if you know what the rules are, they generally relate to fields that are producing, but for economics of scale and all of those factors, the IOCs or the majors capping those fields are shut in and are not producing. After a while, where they've been left not producing, despite the fact that there may be even gushers. Then government takes those and then sells to indigenous. The rule or the principle is that it should be to indigenous companies. I know that has been watered down a bit, but yes, it should increase production, and it should increase production by Nigerians. It should work with the local content policy overall. It should, generally speaking. But whether that would be sufficient in the immediate term to meet our crude our quota is a different conversation, because many of these marginal fields players rely on the infrastructure of the existing majors and IOCs. And two of the majors, I wouldn't want to mention their names, particularly have this challenge of theft. So a lot of guys who use their pipelines are already considering other alternatives, because particularly for one of them, you find out that there's a lot of theft. I mean, I hear complaints of up to 80-90%, because I and my firm advise a number of these junior oil companies and indigenous companies, and I'm aware that these are serious challenges. So in the immediate, if we don't resolve issues around theft, vandalism, pipelines, I'm not sure it would solve the problem, even where there's more production, unless you want to begin to refine locally and use that production locally. Otherwise, it wouldn't in the immediate resolve that problem, because they still use the same infrastructure. Everybody still relies on certain infrastructure we in the oil and gas industry all know about.
Now, one of the, of course, objectives of the PIA is to attract investment. But at this time, I must ask you, you're more of a pure player, a professional in the space. Are we attracting as much investment as we should at this time into the oil and gas sector? Discussions in Abuja at the moment at the gas, I think there's a conference, the oil conference, National Oil Conference, all in Abuja, is focusing on gas and how we can take advantage of gas, what we have as a country. Everybody's talking gas. Are we ready to tap into this market?
Okay, yes, from a policy point of view, the government does seem ready, but it's still implementation. I'll give you a good example. There's the gas flare commercialization program, and I was opportune to be advising one or two of those bidders, and it suddenly went quiet. That's one thing. And for gas, so that instead of flaring gas, certain companies can be given permits, the opportunity to go and take the gas at the flare point, and then use same for productive activities. But it just went quiet. So the problem, two problems: implementation, and at times lack of sufficient transparency in the sector have been problems. So that would attract as much as it should attract. For every investor, everyone looking to invest risk capital, you look at a number of things. Your ability to convert your investment to cash. You look at the certainty of the legal and fiscal regime, and you look at the quality of the asset. No problems with the quality of the asset, but for a long time we had issues with certainty of the fiscal and legal regime because of the PIA that was in the works for nearly 20 years, more than 15 years, and then now we have issues with your ability to produce, particularly around theft. That's more for crude. For gas, it's not quite as bad as it is for crude. So from a policy point of view, government does have a lot of policies to encourage more people to use gas. I'm sure you've seen a number of cars in Lagos where you have, this car uses gas or uses CNG. You understand? So a number of individuals, and there's a lot of policy push. It's just implementation, and you want to be sure there's transparency. And the legal regime and fiscal regime are becoming more settled with the passage of the PIA. It's just issues around whether you even completely implement the PIA, whether international investors have enough confidence, and overall security architecture of the country. That always is a challenge once you don't have security. So issues bordering on oil and gas cannot be taken in isolation. Gas, for example, cannot be taken in isolation. You need to also look at the overall economic situation, monetary policies, security, fiscal policies, overall feel about investing in the country, whether people feel that there'd be creeping expropriation or not, and all of those. So I think we will, over time, attract investment in that subsector, gas, but I'm not sure in the immediate it will be what it should be. And I don't think at the moment it is what it should be, especially because there's also competition from places like Guyana and even our neighbors, Algeria, Angola, who are also very close to us in oil production and quotas. So I think we need to do much more beyond having good policy, transparency, certainty, security, even issues around corruption. Those are issues we need to deal with to make the gas sector more attractive. Because for us, gas is our transition fuel, and a lot of the world is beginning to consider this too, with what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. Even looking beyond just gas, many of them are looking at fossil fuels and reconsidering the 2050 net zero and all, decarbonization and all of those. Because I'm sure you've heard some of the European countries are even looking to coal. So we need to do better with our attractiveness. It's not the quality of our crude or the gas. We've got sweet crude, low sulfur content, and we've got very good. We're gas province. We have more gas than we do even oil. So it's just ensuring we improve on the attractiveness. And we need to show the political will to do that. Work on security, work on those other issues I have raised.
Okay, finally, let's wrap up on this note. It's going to be a 2-in-1 question. We'll wrap up on this note. Already we see that the oil and gas sector is not contributing much to GDP anymore. On the negative side, we've not been seeing that do so well like before. And as we move to a political season, what are your expectations from anyone who becomes Nigeria's CEO with regards to this sector? Just let's wrap up on that note in 2 minutes.
Okay, good question. 2 things. It could be good news, could be when oil contributes less if we are more productive. Productive in terms of refining, productive in terms of petrochemicals and those other related segments, and even manufacturing generally. But it will be bad news, and it is bad news because it's not productivity that is making it reduce, but 1, attractiveness, 2, underinvestment, and those other issues we raised. Now, for whoever becomes president, I'd expect a number of things. 1 is a phased removal of subsidy, such that as the power sector improves, you reduce subsidy. As transportation, you have more transportation options, you reduce subsidy. Now, the challenge for me is we have subsidy because everyone is obliged to buy PMS in particular. The barber, the informal sector, generally, you and I need to run our generators. But if we reduce our dependence on PMS, that's what we colloquially refer to as petrol, then I think we can begin to, in phases, reduce subsidy. That's 1. So subsidy is an issue. Secondly, for me, full implementation of the PIA is also very important. More emphasis on gas is very important. Ensuring to improve the attractiveness around the fiscal issues, around ensuring that you even work on security, because you can't deal with oil and gas outside the broader and larger economy. And also ensuring we add value to our hydrocarbons. It's not just that we are drawers of water and hewers of wood. You want to be sure that there's value addition. There are countries places like UAE that do have oil are beginning to diversify, but you first kick off your economy with gas or crude. Look at what Qatar is doing with its gas. So I want us to borrow from elsewhere and then use that. But subsidy has to go. Issues around having various options and value addition are the immediate wins. I think the new president needs to work on very quickly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayodele Onide, energy lawyer and analyst. Do enjoy the rest of your day. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me.